Long ago, in a land called Uz, there lived a man named Job. He was known far and wide as a man of great integrity, wisdom, and faith. Job was not only righteous in his actions, but also deeply devoted to God. He avoided evil, spoke truthfully, and lived a life that pleased the Lord. Because of his faithfulness, Job was blessed abundantly. He had a large family with 10 children, vast lands, and countless livestock. In every sense, Job was prosperous and respected. But what made Job truly remarkable was not his wealth, it was his heart. Every day, he would pray for his children, offering sacrifices on their behalf, just in case they had sinned in their hearts. Job was a man who feared God and lived humbly before him. One day in the heavenly realms, something unusual happened. Satan came before God along with other heavenly beings. God spoke highly of Job, saying, "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright." But Satan challenged God, arguing that Job was only faithful because he had been blessed with so much. Satan said, "Take away everything he has, and he will surely curse you." God, knowing Job's heart, allowed Satan to test him, but with limits. Satan was not allowed to harm Job physically at first, and so the testing began. In a single devastating day, Job's life changed completely. Messengers came one after another with terrible news. Raiders had stolen his oxen and donkeys. Fire had fallen from the sky and burned up his sheep. His camels were taken. Worst of all, a powerful wind struck the house where his children were gathered, and it collapsed, killing all 10 of them. Imagine the weight of that moment, the silence after the last messenger spoke. Everything Job loved was gone. Yet in the midst of unimaginable grief, Job did something extraordinary. He tore his robe, shaved his head, and fell to the ground, not in anger but in worship. He said, "Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." Even in his pain, Job did not sin or blame God. But the test was not over. Once again, Satan appeared before God and argued that Job would curse him if his own body were afflicted. God allowed Satan to test Job again, but this time, Job's life had to be spared. Soon after, Job was struck with painful sores from the soles of his feet to the top of his head. His body was covered in agony. He sat among ashes, scraping his skin with broken pottery, trying to find relief. The man who once lived in comfort was now in complete suffering. Even his wife, seeing his condition, urged him to give up. She said, "Curse God and die." But Job replied, "Shall we accept good from God and not trouble?" In all this, Job did not sin with his lips. News of Job's suffering spread, and 3 of his friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, came to comfort him. When they saw him from a distance, they barely recognized him. They wept loudly, tore their robes, and sat with him in silence for 7 days and 7 nights. No one spoke a word, because they saw how great his suffering was. Finally, Job broke the silence. He spoke, not to curse God, but to express the depth of his pain. He wished he had never been born. He questioned why he was suffering so greatly despite living a righteous life. His words were filled with sorrow and confusion. His friends began to speak, but instead of comforting him, they accused him. They believed that suffering was always a result of sin. They insisted that Job must have done something wrong to deserve such punishment. They urged him to confess his sins and seek forgiveness. But Job knew in his heart that he had not committed any hidden sin that would explain such suffering. He defended his integrity and cried out to God for answers. Again and again, Job asked, "Why?" The conversations went back and forth. His friends spoke with certainty, but without understanding. Job responded with honesty, refusing to pretend or give false confessions. Though he was confused and hurting, he still longed for God. Deep down, he trusted that God was just, even if he could not understand his ways. At one point, Job made a powerful declaration of faith. He said, "I know that my Redeemer lives, and that in the end he will stand on the earth." Even in the darkness, Job held on to hope. Then, after a long silence, something incredible happened. God himself answered Job, not with explanations, but with questions. Out of a whirlwind, God spoke. He asked Job, "Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Can you command the morning or understand the paths of the stars? Have you seen the storehouses of snow or walked in the depths of the sea? Through these questions, God revealed his infinite wisdom and power. He showed Job that the universe is far more complex and magnificent than human understanding can grasp. God was not being harsh. He was reminding Job that his ways are higher, his knowledge deeper, and his purposes beyond human comprehension. Job listened in awe. He realized how small he was compared to the greatness of God. He understood that he didn't need all the answers, he needed trust. Humbled and transformed, Job responded, "Surely I spoke of things I did not understand, things too wonderful for me to know. My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. Therefore I repent in dust and ashes." Job didn't repent of hidden sins, but of questioning God's wisdom. He surrendered fully, trusting God completely. After this, God turned to Job's friends. He rebuked them for not speaking truthfully about him. He instructed them to offer sacrifices, and he told Job to pray for them. In a beautiful act of grace, Job prayed for his friends, even after all they had said. And then God restored Job. Not only did God heal him, but he gave him twice as much as he had before. Job's fortunes were renewed. He had more livestock, more wealth, and once again he was blessed with children. His life was filled with joy, and he lived many more years, seeing generations of his family. But the greatest restoration was not material, it was spiritual. Job's relationship with God had deepened. He had moved from knowing about God to truly experiencing him. The story of Job is not just about suffering, it is about faith that endures. It teaches us that even the most righteous people can face trials. It reminds us that we may not always understand why things happen, but we can trust in who God is. Job's life shows us that faith is not proven in comfort, but in hardship. True faith holds on even when everything else is taken away. It worships in the storm, trusts in the silence, and believes in God's goodness even when life feels unfair. If you are going through a difficult time, remember Job. Remember that your pain is not unseen, your questions are not ignored, and your faith, no matter how small it feels, matters deeply to God. Just like Job, you may not get all the answers, but you can encounter something greater, a deeper, stronger relationship with God. And in the end, that is the greatest blessing of all.